Welcome to our last webinar of 2025, the 47-day timeline. I'm Leah Toms from the marketing team, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today. We get asked about the key dates of shorter certificate lifespans all the time, so wanted to conclude the year with a handy timeline of all the key dates that you need to look out for. So what are we looking at today? We have the milestones of 47-day TLS for you, past, present, and future. We'll go into the reasons behind shorter certificate lifespans and offer a path to full automation. And at the end, we'll go through a 47-day toolkit with actionable steps to prepare. And for all of this, I have Tim, our Chief Compliance Officer, Nick, our Chief Technology Officer, and finally, Rida, Sales Engineering Manager here for you today. As always, the presentation is recorded and we'll share it with you after the session. We'll also share the custom toolkit that we're going to talk about with you. So you will be very well equipped. If you've got any questions during the presentation, send them our way. Please use the Q&A function and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. And with this, I'm passing over to you, Tim and Nick, to kick us off.
Thank you, Leah. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm good, thanks, Tim. And how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rita?
I'm good, Nick. Nick
Yeah.
and Tim. Thank you.
Welcome for joining us, Nick. And I do a fair number of these, but it's always nice to have a fresh voice. The original working title of this presentation was All the Dates. And the reason for that is because we've always zeroed in on a few important key dates like March 15, 2026. But when you really get into the details of it, there are some other milestones that authentically matter that we want to also call people's attention to. So we're gonna, make sure we all understand the fundamentals of the march down to 47-day certificates, which arguably we should call 46-day certificates. We'll get to that. And while we're at it, point out the various key dates that are really going to matter. And then, as we said, Rita's here to help us talk about how to get to a full automation perspective. So, a little bit of background. Certificate lifespans have been going down and down. Once upon a time, could be anything. And then with the establishment of the baseline requirements, they were capped at 5 years, and then they've gone down over time since then. And we're at the point now where today the maximum term for a public TLS cert is 398 days. I almost said 198 days, which would have shocked everybody. 398 days. But there has been a movement over the last really 2 years to drive that down further with the original goal of a quarterly update, 90 days, but now settling instead on a monthly update, which is the 47/46 days we talked about. This is done. This is a past CA Browser Forum ballot, and the step down that you're going to see happen here is happening. This isn't speculative. This isn't a proposal. This is the plan of record. So with that, right, these are the dates we normally talk about. What are the key dates? And this is worth going over in some detail so we understand. You'll see there's 4 columns here. The leftmost column is the effective date. And then it says certificate term. This is maximum term that a public TLS certificate can be. Let's emphasize that. It's a public certificate. Your private certificates, you can do whatever you want. There's also a reduction in the DCV reuse period, which is the amount of time that a CA can use a previous DCV event to issue a new certificate for a domain without having to redo domain control validation, which is what DCV stands for. And then the org validation reuse period, which is how when we check out your business is really the business it says it is, that is going down as well. And that's the easiest one. So maybe we get that out of the way right now. The OV reuse period today is 825 days. That means that if we organize that, you really have Tim's car wash, then for the next 825 days, we don't have to do that work again. For the same order from the same organization, we can count on that being right. Sectigo does this annually anyway. If 365 days have passed, we'll go ahead and reorg OVU. And so that will step down on March 15, 2026 to 366 days. If you're an existing Sectigo customer, nothing's going to change for you because we were doing OV annually anyway. So we're going to now not talk about that, proceed to not talk about that for the remainder of the time because it's not that impactful and it's not really going to affect us very much. The most interesting one is that one on the left, certificate term. So as we said today, this is 398 days. This is how long we can issue a certificate now. Why 398? 398 is if you take the longest possible year, a leap year, and you add the longest possible month, 31 days, and you add one more day, you come to 398. So that is basically supposed to be big enough to encompass the longest possible 13-month period. And an easier way to think of that is think of that as a year plus a little bit. And the little bit is helpful because we can't necessarily time things down to the day, or we don't want to. We want to renew a little early, or we want to have a little bit of fudging room in case the renewal date comes on a weekend or a holiday, and we want to just be able to do it the following, business day. And so 398 days gives us a little bit of fudging room. It's a year plus a little bit. And that plus a little bit is very important because you're going to see these in all of these dates. So on March 15, 2026, maximum certificate term drops to 200 days, or probably 199 days, which we'll return to. And that will be as of March 15, 2026. What is that? That's 6 months plus a little bit. So instead of annual certs, those are 6-month certs. Then on March 15, 2027, drops down 100 days, probably 99 days. We'll return to that. What is that? That's 3 months plus a little bit, right? So those are now quarterly certificates. And then on March 15, 2029, 47 aka 46 days is monthly plus a little bit. So think of that really as going from annually to half year to quarterly to monthly. And that's the renewal cadence you should look at and expect. And that's what these days really mean. Nick, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it. So I was going to mention the OV reuse period one more time, if you'll permit me,
All right.
once we talk about this middle column, which I can go into now. So the middle
Go for
column,
it.
the next one, is the domain control validation reuse period. And I think this is the one that is perhaps the most interesting. It was kind of the lead that was buried when a lot of this stuff was discussed and announced. So you've got the certificate term that you just perfectly covered, Tim, and kind of why for that. The DCV reuse period, that is how often we as a CA are required to verify that you control the domain names or the fully qualified domain names that you want us to put in these certificates. So if you say, or if I go and say, I want a certificate for nickfrance.com, I have to firstly prove I can control that and prove that that is my domain name. And there's a bunch of different ways we can do that through DNS and at least for a bit longer through email. And we as a CA are allowed to reuse that check up to a year, up to 398 days, this 398-day period. So we can do it once, you can validate your domain, and then you can issue a bunch of certs for the same name all day long for about a year. And that's how the system currently stands today. As you can see, when we start early next year, that reuse period goes down by half. It goes down in step, as Tim explained, to 200 days. So you will need to re-verify all of the domains you issue certificates for now every 200 days, or about on a kind of 6-month cadence. And then that steps down again further in line with the certificate down to 100 days. And again, you're going to have to redo this process every 100 days or less, every 3 months really, to prove that you still control all those domain names. So that's the point where you start to think about automation and hooking up your certificate systems to your DNS systems. But then finally, you go down at the last drop. Instead of going down to 47 days, you're actually going to have to redo that domain control verification every 10 days, essentially weekly at that point, to avoid any kind of expired ones and not do it every 10 days. So you're going to go a lot more frequent on those. And that is something that is going to be somewhat of a challenge for some organizations. They're definitely going to have to get the DNS teams talking and friendly with the PKI and the certificate management teams, because every week to re-verify all the domain names that you control is something you are going to have to automate. But you can see it goes down in lockstep with the certificate lifetime until we get to the end and it's more frequent. And the one thing I did want to mention with that in relation to the OV reuse period that we get is why are those different? Why can I still do the organization validation once a year, but now you're making me prove I control the domain names every week? And the real answer is, what is it verifying and how long is that generally valid for? I think most people will accept, companies remain the same for good periods of time and generally at least a year. And your example before, Tim, verifying Tim's car wash, it's probably not going to change hands or change
Right.
company any information much more frequently. And that's reflected in doing it every year. DNS changes all the time. DNS records are constantly in flux in many cases. They can update on a second basis. They certainly are updated more frequently. And since the certificate is an attestation that this entity A controls this DNS name B, that's something that has to be repeated much more frequently because that's the bit that your browsers look at to verify whether a certificate is good. So that's why we're doing that more frequently.
And also
the
stakes are higher on that, right?
Absolutely.
So first of all, org information is only in OV and EV certs. And domains, of course, are associated with every cert. So that's a big difference right there, just in terms of the reach and the scope. And the other thing is that at the end of the day, if you can spoof the domain, if you can get your cert in there and do some kind of DNS poisoning and get somebody who thinks they're going to the right domain and they're not, that is the ultimate attack because there's no defense against it. And so getting that right and keeping that right and current, the browsers, I would say, correctly discern that as the single most important mission. And you see that attitude of theirs reflected in these two different reuse periods.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Now, but as I've already hinted to several times, it's not really going to be any of these days. And by way of example, certificate term, maximum term is listed as 398 days. Sectigo only goes up to 397 right now.
Yep.
And the reason for this is because these are hard limits and you cannot go over by even a second. And this was made very clear a number of years ago when some big revocations had to occur. For instance, Let's Encrypt had a statement in their CPS that said their certs would be up to 90 days in length, and it turned out that they were issuing certs that were 90 days plus 1 second. And they had to revoke millions of certs. So a 200-day cap, pragmatically, to prevent this kind of problem, turns into a 199-day certificate term. And so when you look at this, you should expect, I think, likely from every public CA, certainly from Sectigo, expect to see that on March 15, it'll go down to 199 days. On March 15, 2027, it'll go down to 99 days. And in 2029, it will go down to 46 days. And expect to see the same thing happen for the DCV reuse period and the OV reuse period. And I think that's a very reasonable expectation. I would be surprised if we saw any but a few, let's call them fringe CAs, not doing this. Certainly any large commercially usable CA, I would expect to follow those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Tim. And it's not something we've much talked about before, but your example is a prime one. I don't think it's the only example, is it?
It isn't. Right.
Time is hard. You've got leap seconds, leap years, time zones. It's fairly complicated. And to be honest, if you're doing timings with things where you can be a bit loose about it or you can be forgiving of a few minutes either way, then there isn't a problem. But as you've said in this case, these guidelines are very clear. They're very hard. And what we don't want to do, certainly as Sectigo, is issue, thousands, millions of certificates and then have the same kind of issue where they're off by a second or fractions of a second, and we have to go through massive revocation events.
And this was litigated and made unambiguous on more than one occasion in the last 4 years, where somebody did have an over by 1 second problem and kind of said, look, is this really? And the answer was, look, no, there's a time limit. Because once you start saying, oh, it's okay to be over by 1 second, well, then how about 2 seconds? How about a minute? How about an hour? How about a day? How about a year?
Yep.
Right? And so you have to draw a line somewhere. And the line is drawn on the amount of time that's listed in the BRs, which means if you're over by a second, you're over.
And I think one thing to bear in mind with this is, though, that, and we'll talk about it in a second, and we've talked about it many times before, but one of the main reasons for this is really to drive the adoption of automation. We want people to automate. Everybody wants people to automate. And quite honestly, when you are automated, the difference between 199 and 200 days isn't really that big of a deal.
Yes.
This isn't,
Yes.
us saying we do 199 days. That isn't saying that people are going to lose time or there's going to be time lost or paying
Right.
more or paying less. It isn't that. It's purely to avoid problems in the future, but it's also something that shouldn't matter when it's automated. If you're automated, you should be in a position whereby your CA can start issuing you certificates that are valid for 10 days instead of
Right.
397, and your system shouldn't know any different, and they should
I've
just
talked
continue
to
to work.
PKI managers at large organizations say, yeah, you know what, we're going to get this stuff automated because once the 6 month thing comes around, it's going to be too hard, but we're not going to go to 6 months. We're just going to go to monthly, right? Because once we're automated, why do we care? And my response to that is, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely correct. And I've talked to people who have said, you know what, we're not going to stop at monthly. We'll go there now, but in the long run, we want to be doing weekly. And once again, I've said, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So, once you're automated, I think the rules change considerably in how you think about these terms.
Yeah. It's just an important thing to bear in mind, so people don't think they're kind of losing time, or I'm going to buy a 200-day certificate and I only get 199 days. That isn't the case. This is something designed to encourage automation.
So that's it. We've talked this slide to death. We've discussed all the dates, right, Nick? No more dates to discuss, right?
Well,
okay, here's all the dates. So when you start thinking about this thing, it's worth playing out what are all the various things that are going to happen. So we talk a lot about March 15th, but let's start with March 14th. March 14th, 2026 is a very important date. Why is that, Nick?
That is the last day you will be able to get.
That's the last day you can get a 1-year cert. And I am predicting that there will be people getting these certs in volume up to the last possible minute in order to stave off the need to get their automation solved for more time.
If history is anything to go by, when we've and people should be aware, we've talked about it before, but we've done these kind of changes before. We haven't gone below a year before, but we've always had that slide at the start. We've been from 10 years down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we've made these changes before, and we know there is absolutely a spike in early renewals the day before any deadline to get the longest possible time they have.
The week before. Some people get it done ahead of time and they get it done a week before, right? But yes, there is going to be a rush right up until the end. Now, this is an important thing because March 14th is the last day that is allowed by the rules, but that does not necessarily mean that that is the last day that any given CA, including Sectigo, will be doing this. So if you are going to be one of these last-minute rushers, then it's worth finding out from your CA what's the last day that they will give you a 1-year cert. I'll point out that March 14th is a Saturday. March 15th is a Sunday. It strikes me that Friday, the 13th, hope you're not superstitious, might actually be the last day for a lot of CAs.
Exactly.
And I'll say that Sectigo hasn't established what that will be for us yet. We will telegraph that well ahead of time. And it's something for you to know because you don't want to show up on the 14th, come in on your day off on Saturday to issue a bunch of certs and find out that you missed the window.
I just want to add one small comment here, which isn't on the diagram, but it's something that we try and repeat most of the time. Let's say you get your final 1-year certificate on the last day that it's possible, right? You get that, you issue it, you're happy with it. And then all of a sudden that next week, you think, oh, I forgot a domain name or I need to reissue it for some reason. You are after the deadline. That reissue will be limited by the guidelines at that point to, 199 days or
Correct.
200 maximum. So it's important to understand that when we say this is the last day you can issue, it's the last day that a CA can issue a 1-year certificate or reissue or replace or rekey or
Yes.
renew or any of those other R words. It's the last point at which they can do that. So just so everybody is clear, and hopefully most people are aware of that one, just because you get your 1-year certificate on the very last day possible, it still applies to the new rules if you decide to do something else with that certificate after the deadline. Just want to make sure everybody's clear.
That is a great point, and I'm glad you made that point, right? Important to consider. So then March 15 rolls around, and as we see, this is the day that certificate term and DCV reuse and OV reuse all drop down to the new limits, right? So anything you do starting March 15 with 100% assurity from any public CA will be on the new limits. So now the next date worth noting is September 30, 2026, because this is the day where the 6-month cadence really kicks in. So starting on March 15, all the certs you're getting are only 6 months in term. In terms of your work, in terms of renewing certificates and installing new certificates, your life doesn't change. It's the same in April. It's the same in May. It's the same in June. Because the 6-month certs haven't started to expire yet. On September 30, 2026, your 6-month certs have started to expire. So this is an important date because this is where essentially the work you have for renewing certs doubles. Right? This is where the amount of humans' fingers on keyboards to get this done doubles.
I just want to add something very
important date.
To add something very quickly, Tim, to the March the 15th dates as well. Something important to think about. And again, it's another thing that your CA will think about as well. As you've correctly put here, the maximum DCV reuse period is 199 or 200 days, and the maximum OV reuse period is a year. That means that if you have done your validation longer than 199 days prior to that date, it will not be valid and you'll have to do it again. Right? So you've got to bear that in mind. So if your CA is perhaps currently renewing your org validation every 2 years, unlike Sectigo, but let's say they are, and they happen to have validated your organization last 400 days ago when it's March the 15th, you should not be able to issue certificates at that point with OV. You should have to go back and have that revalidated. Now, most of the CAs are going to redo this in advance and hopefully have a schedule and a cadence as we are. But it's important to know that it means at that point, you can't reuse existing validations that may be older than those dates. So it's just an important thing to bear in mind, especially with whichever CA you use, that you may have to go through some of those processes in the lead up to this March deadline.
If you got DCV'd in April 2025, or or for that matter, August 2025, you're going to have to redo DCV on that. Correct.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Nick. Good point. So September 30, 2026 is when the 6-month certs begin to expire, which means that your renewal work, your hands-on keyboard work, doubles at that point. So that's an important date for people to be cognizant of. I am predicting, I hope I'm wrong on this, but I'm predicting that we're going to see the frequency of outages go up as folks all of a sudden realize that they've got work to do that they kind of forgot that they were going to have to do, or never quite realized that they were going to have to do. So that's a good day to mark on your calendar, and that's a good day to be cognizant of. Now we move forward to 2027. So again, March 14, that's the last day to get a 199-day cert. And that's a last day for DCV reuse for more than 99 days. Do I think we're going to get another rush on certs on that date? I do. I'm expecting a bigger rush in 2026, but I think 2027 will roll around. There's going to be folks who are just still doing it manually and doing it twice as often. And once again, they're not going to want to do it every quarter. And once again, right at the end, we're going to see a bunch of early renewal. So I'm expecting
Well, as you point out, Tim, in the bottom orange box on that March 27 date, that's also the same time when these last-minute rush 1-year certificates expire or thereabouts.
Also your 1-year certs that you rushed to get last time are going to be expiring on that date.
Yep.
And they're going to drop straight from 1 year to 99 days unless you early renew those to get them on a 6-month cadence. So again, if you're not paying attention to all of this, you could find yourself with a whole giant wave of work hitting you at the same time. And that's something to be aware of. And look at your certs and when they're expiring and planning. And if you do run to get a bunch of them before March 14, and they're running along, and now you're coming up on the year, and you're going to early renew some in order to get around the drop down to 99 days, and at the same time, got these other ones expiring, and all of a sudden you got a whole flood of stuff all at once. That's worth looking at, paying attention to, and planning that so you don't create a problem for yourself. Right?
Yep, absolutely.
Once again, March 15 rolls around. The maximum certificate term is now 99 days. Maximum DCV reuse is now 99 days. Those are both sitting in there. All right. April 16, 2027 is the last possible date for a 1-year cert. If on March 14 you have a CA who is willing to sell you a 398-day cert and you get it, that is the last date that that cert can be active. So after April 16, 2027, all of the 1-year public TLS certs will be out of the ecosystem with 100% surety. Now, that's what that date is. Now, most of them will be gone by then, but that's still, I think, a significant milestone.
Yeah, because people often do these certificates. We say 1 year,
Yeah.
but you can go up to 397 days. Some people may have done it from a prior renewal with just 10 extra days to account for these overlaps. Things that probably won't exist in the future because we as kind of humans are quite used to these nice round 1-year periods, and we have these little extra bits of days we can stick on the end. But by that April 16th date, everything's going to be gone.
And then June 22, 2027, what happens? Now your 3-month certs begin to expire. So anything that isn't automated, last time we had until September until this wall was going to come hit us. Now this wall is going to come hit us in June because they're 3-month certs. So once again, whatever renewal cadence you're used to manually with the 6-month certs, that's the date where that cadence, where that fingers on keyboard work doubles again. And it's coming in sooner this time. Right? September 29, 2027, that is the last possible day for an active 6-month cert. Once again, if you got a 6-month cert on March 14, 2027, September 29, that's the last possible day. After that, there will be no more active 6-month certs. And then we flash forward to 29 and you see the same thing. March 14, 2029 is the last day a CA can issue 99-day certificates. After that, it drops to a monthly cadence. Hopefully by now, almost all of this is a non-issue. But if you still have anything that is not automated, 3.5 years from now, if you still have anything that's not automated, once again, there will probably be kind of a mini rush for people to get those quarterly certs. So they have 3 more months before they run into the monthly cadence. Because on March 15, maximum cert turn is now 46 days. That is a monthly cadence. Maximum DCV reuse drops to 9 days, not 10, 9 days, at which point you're DCVing fast. And again, you want to make sure that you're set up for that. And then those certs, the 1-month certs, begin to expire on April 30. So again, your life doesn't change for a month. For the next 5 weeks, your life is normal, but then April 30 rolls around and it ain't normal anymore.
Yep, that's when everything should be in. Yeah. Well, hopefully it should be long before then. Let's be honest. I mean, the fact that 2028 isn't on this timeline because 2028 is when the natural renewal cycles and the natural cadence just sits in. We don't have any kind of last dates. We don't have any of the the big blue dates. But by the time we get to April 30th, everything is going to be automated, short lifetime certs, or should be. Let's hope and see what happens when we get there. But that's the last one on our timeline, Tim, isn't it?
So think about it. It's not just those March 15 dates, but something that looks more like this is the various dates on the calendar that you're really going to want to have marked and pay attention to. All right. So we talk about this a lot, but why are we doing this? Nick, why did the CA Browser Forum do this at all?
We can do a quick recap, Tim. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the main thing is I always say is shorter is better, right? We talk about certificates, and we talked briefly before. These certificates are like an attestation. It says that this entity controlled this fully qualified domain name at this point in time, and
Yep.
my assertion is going to be valid for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Problem is, of course, if something is wrong with that certificate, if it's compromised, if it's misissued with incorrect information, and it's suitable for
Private key
abuse,
is stolen or leaked. Yeah.
all of these bad things that can happen, the shorter that time that certificate is out there can be abused, the better. Right. So that's the main thing.
Yep.
Shorter is better. If you've got
Yep.
something out there that has abuse potential, try and limit that abuse potential and keep it as short as possible. The second reason, which is also an equally good one, especially with other things that we won't really talk about today too much, but this idea of post-quantum cryptography, that is, a computer that can practically break all the algorithms that we use to secure data today. Then when you want to change to those new algorithms, if everybody's on a nice fast cadence of 30-day certificates and 10-day revalidation of domains, you can move pretty quickly. We know that we'll be able to push that technology out to people in a short amount of time. And it's not even just the post-quantum stuff. It could be other industry standard changes we have to make, as we've done before. Bigger key sizes to make things stronger, getting rid of old algorithms because they're outdated or vulnerable. So it gives us the cadence that we didn't have before. It gives us the ability to move everybody to better standards much more rapidly than we have had before. And the last three reasons, I would largely lump those all in together, but it's things like operational efficiency. Nobody really does a lot of things by hand anymore. Everybody wants to automate. You build your machines and you build your laptops and your desktops automatically. You build your software automatically with CI/CD pipelines. Doing things by hand gives you efficiency. It frees up people's time. It means you can just check when things go wrong and not have to check every time it goes right, and a host of other reasons. And that does give you the same thing of agility and flexibility. It means that if other standards change, we talk a lot here about lifetime changes, that's the focus. But we all know, as Tim and I do these regular webinars, there's a lot of other changes in the industry coming up. There's cycling of routes more frequently and changes to issuing CAs and all this good stuff. If you're automated, those changes can be written out very, very easily because you're agile. You're prepared for these changes instead of expecting to have to do things by hand. And finally, best practices. I mean, it is best practice to have this automated. It is best practice to have everything in place to be able to withstand these changes, to be able to deal with the cryptographic standards and other changes very quickly. And it's just best practice. There's compliance schemes and other things that you may have in your business or your industry that are going to start requiring this. They require certificates and certain levels of security anyway, but they certainly are going to start requiring having them automated in the future. So it's a good one to have, even though it's the last on this list here. Any other thoughts on that one, Tim?
No, I think that's exactly right, Nick. And this is happening across all kinds of certificates. It's not only public TLS. That's just what we're talking about today. This is just a general trend for a long time. Shorter lived certs, more agile PKI is better for all these reasons, kind of regardless of the use case. So we are really committed. We're here to help you get this done. Back in the spring, we were talking to the people about this, about how to plan and what to do. Now, of course, it is decidedly not spring, as I can tell from looking out my window. But this is really the time to be working on this because while, as I said, everything will feel the same on April 1, number one, you'll have missed your opportunity to do some early uh, changeover if that's what you want to do, some early renewal, but also, we want to be working on this because when September does roll around and that cadence doubles, it'd be mighty nice if the amount of risk you're taking on and the amount of work you're taking on doesn't double with it. The other thing to bear in mind, if we look at the third column here, is that one of the things as we're getting into this is we're talking to a lot of people who are probably using public certs where it's not necessarily their best solution, where a private CA might be much more appropriate to what they're doing. And under these circumstances, we can talk about getting you on a private CA as well. And then you don't have to worry about these timelines. You've got a whole different renewal cadence that you've set. So with that, Rita, take it away.
Yes. I'm not sure that it's this one, but yeah, I can take it from here.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, there is some myths around automation. We're talking about CLM is already automated, and most of the time, what we see within our customers and prospects that they are thinking that automation is mostly a notification system. What I mean by that is receiving an expired notification for some of CLM users might be taken as automation, which is not really the case, which is not as we as Sectigo see automation. It should be end-to-end automation, meaning deploying the certificate into the endpoint. The second myth is basically centralized key management is automation. It's not really automation because it's not end-to-end and it's not driving, I would say, certificate management until the end device. We can use Key Vault, of course, for some cloud services that will ease up, I would say, certificate management, but it's not real automation. And the third myth actually is automation takes much time and effort. Maybe it was the case 10 years ago, but today with all, I would say, the standard auto-enrollment protocol, like IATNI, for example, all the agents that we can provide and the built-in integration that we have in our solution, Sectigo Certificate Manager, will help you with the automation. And it's, believe me, it's not taking more than, I would say, minutes instead of, I would say, the time that is needed to issue manually a certificate, deploy it into, I would say, the endpoints that will use this certificate. Next slide, please.
And go again.
Yeah.
Yep, I could talk about this for a second, Rita, if you like, because this is just what you were leading into before about the automation versus manual CLM. And we presented this slide a few times. I know, Rita, you and I have even in person a couple of times to try and give customers and people listening to this webinar a bit of an idea and a bit of a use case of how to kind of sell this idea of automation. Because sometimes, as much as we've given you lots of reasons and all of the guideline changes are giving everybody reasons to do this, it's sometimes useful to at least illustrate that, maybe for budget reasons or for management reasons, to try and get resources within your organization. So this is really just a very quick breakdown of some of the benefits of manual versus automated. The first one is the one, as Rita just mentioned there in the last slide, is how long it takes to actually get a certificate provisioned. I've done tens of thousands of these things in my lifetime, and I still struggle occasionally, and I still have to try and remember certain commands and the right buttons to click, but it can take time, right? It may not be 30 to 60 minutes, that may be in some cases, or it could be just a few minutes. But if you look on the automated side, we put here less than 5 minutes, and even that is, I think, a bit of an overestimate. We certainly know we have customers and subscribers who are validating, issuing, and installing tens of thousands of certificates an hour, and each one of them is probably done in less than kind of 7 to 10 seconds. So this whole thing, it can be very, very quick when it's automated. The whole process doesn't need humans involved. Generate a key, generate request, validate it, get the cert signed, get it installed, get your system restarted. Everything's good, and it can take a matter of seconds. So it's always going to be quicker when it's automated. Of course, there's less of a risk there, right? Once it's automated, you set these automated flows up to work properly. You want to be notified when something goes wrong so you can prevent an outage. But if you're doing these things by hand, a config change, a typo, someone being trained or not perhaps knowing what they're doing, these errors are possible to make when you're doing things by hand and can cause pretty disastrous outages, as we've covered many times before in different presentations, the perils of having expired or incorrectly installed certificates. And of course, doing it in an automated manner is going to give you a lot more productivity, right? It's going to free up time. Nobody wants to be doing certificate installations by hand. There's probably a lot of people doing it today once a year, and they really don't like doing that. They're not going to want to do that every week. It's really a waste of someone's time. So you want to automate it so that people can focus on other work, more important things, and have your certificates managed as kind of just an infrastructure thing that just works. And of course, compliance, we talked about briefly. It's definitely something you need to have. There's going to be more and more requirements from an audit perspective. There already are to have certificates. There will certainly be to have some kind of automation to manage those. And today, obviously, if you're doing it all by hand, it's definitely not got there. And then finally, the thing about security posture. If you're doing it by hand, you're reacting to a calendar notification that your cert's about to expire. You're reacting to a customer calling you in saying, hey, I can't get on your website. If you're automated, These systems are designed to renew certificates well in advance of expiry. How long do I have left on my cert? I have a third of its lifetime. I'm going to go and get a new one installed now. And if that doesn't work, I'll send an error and I still have a third of the time left on that certificate and no problem. So it's definitely a lot more benefits to having this automated, as well as the fact that, quite honestly, you actually have to, given the lifetime changes that we're talking about. Next slide, please, Tim.
Yeah.
And this is just a quick illustration of what we call enterprise grade automation. There are a lot of options available for automation, right? We're just going to talk a little bit about some of them in a minute, but I think it's important to know that for everybody to know that automation is entirely possible. It has been for quite a long time. It's only obviously recently seeing more adoption that we desperately want, but there are many different options for you to be able to do it. You're starting on the left there. You've got the standards like Risa just mentioned before, Acme. Acme is kind of the gold standard. It's designed to do TLS, public TLS certificate automation. It's an open protocol. There are thousands of clients and scripts and tools written in all different kinds of languages. It's being integrated in more and more appliances and devices. And it is the best way, arguably, to do a certificate installation for public TLS where you're having to cycle it, as frequently as every few days in the future. There are a couple of other options, of course. You've got EST and SCEP, which are some old similar protocols. And most CAs, including Sectigo, will have APIs. They will have APIs that you can script against and you can write your own tools to automate against. And it may have a little bit more functionality based on the certificate management tool you use and your CA, and not just Acme, which is kind of an open standard that everybody sticks to. But that does lead a little bit onto the second box, where we talk about larger deployments. We do know, as great as Acme is, and it is fantastic, there are places where it isn't going to work, or there are places where you want something with a bit more control. You want to be able to install a single agent and have that distribute certificates across a fleet of different servers within your infrastructure. And at least in Sectigo's case, we have something we call the network agent, which is, as it sounds, it's an agent you install in your infrastructure. It communicates back to ours to get certificates on the automated timelines or manually when you tell it to, and it will deploy those certificates out to all of the different parts of your infrastructure you connect it to. It's one-to-many, so you only need one of the agents to talk to potentially hundreds and hundreds of different services, and you have things like PAM integration for privilege management, and it is GUI driven as well in many cases, so you can actually see an interface and install that and set it up. That also does lead into all the integrations we have, and these are fairly specific to Sectigo, but I'd say most certificate management tools and other CAs have similar integrations by design to help automate everywhere, because there's no CA that can opt out of these changes. But if you're using cloud services, if you've got load balances or security appliances, firewalls, and other things like that, there's plenty of places where you can do integrations so that you can automate certificate. So even if it doesn't have a button that says, plug my Acme details in and automate, you can still use all of these integrations to bring all this stuff together. And very finally, although this is slightly out of scope of public certificates, we do know that many, many people are still using what you call Microsoft PKI or Active Directory certificate services for handling their certificates as well. And the same tool that we offer and the same suite of things can actually handle automation integration into your ADCS solution and bring it all together in what we call a single pane of glass, as they say in the sales and marketing world. And you can get all the benefits of the automation that we provide alongside replacing your Active Directory certificate services with a modern managed service as well. So I'm going to hand it back over to Rida now. If we can go to the next slide, Tim. And he's going to run through this 5-step guide to becoming 47-day ready.
Thank you, Nick and Tim. And yes, from here, I will give a practical 5-step playbook to get to 47 days ready. Just the exact moves, I would say, that we've built and seen successful. So the first step is awareness and discovery. You can secure what you can see. So step 1 is full discovery of your certificates across your environments, public, private, internal, external. The aim is to have all your certificates in a single pane of glass. For this, you can use, for example, Certificate Transparency, which is a database of publicly trusted certificates, and Sectigo provide crt.sh, which is basically a tool that gives you a list of your public certificates issued either for your domains, or you can also just type in your organization and you will have all the certificates that are attached and issued for this organization. You can, of course, also use other tools like Netcraft and Qualys. And the automated way basically to do discovery is basically rely on CLM tools like Sectigo Certificate Manager, when you can provide a list of fully qualified domain names or IP ranges, and then SCM is able to discover the certificate and also link them to the endpoint where they are deployed. The aim is to identify certificates that are problematic or high risk, and also prioritize certificates based on the business impact. And also, don't forget mutual TLS upcoming changes mentioned by Nick. This discovery will help also identify them in and also replace them with private certificate. So we prepared a 47-day toolkit covering every step of those. It will be shared at the end of the webinar, and basically on the first step, it will come with those assets. Next slide, please. Basically a step-by-step guide to do discovery within SCM, and also a ready-to-use awareness email template to kick off the effort across the organization. Communication is key on this topic because basically some change will be needed. Next slide, please. The second step, so it's the vendor and application mapping. Once we have the visibility of the certificate, we need to map them to the application and services they support. For example, load balancers, API gateways, web servers, and so on. This will also help prioritize critical systems for renewal and define clear ownership by engaging with application and network teams. Having a clear inventory and application mapping will help you understand the current deployment methods and also streamline future automation by defining the right option for each application. Next slide, please. On the toolkit, we'll have a worksheet to document vendors, applications, priorities, and also project plan. Let's go to the next slide. So on the step 3, which is basically automation mapping and PQC readiness, we will take the mapping that has been done on step 3 and align it with automation options, and not only for certificate. As mentioned by Nick and Tim, domain control validation periods will also follow the same lifespan reduction as certificate, except for 2029, where the CV will go down to 10 days. So SCM does provide some automation options, not only for certificate, but also for DCV. And when it comes to certificate, as mentioned, we can rely on Acme, our built-in integration, and also our network agent that is one-to-many architecture in where Acme is one-to-one. So while doing this assessment, we can also assess the post-quantum cryptography readiness of the application that are used within an organization, because 47 days is, I would say, there, and the next frontier basically is reaching crypto agility, because we know that quantum computers might be in the future able to break RSA and elliptic curves. Next slide, please. So on the toolkit, you will have multiple things here, a checklist for DCV automation, an overview of SCM automation capabilities, a practical Acme SSL document deployment reference, automation and PQC mapping, and also DNS automation mapping. Next slide, please. Basically, next step is the rollout. So we will roll up a timeline, a training plan also. You will need to assign resources for all this, I would say, activities. RASI is very good when it comes to ensuring that roles are clear, and also we need to combine this with internal communication. So everyone within your organization, especially the teams that are dealing with certificate, understand the upcoming changes. And next slide, please. Here are, I would say, the concrete assets to make rollout predictable, a detailed roadmap, a rollout roadmap, a RASI, I would say, template for certificate management, and ready-to-use communication templates. Next slide, please. So, as I said, crypto agility is the next step. So we will move from reactive renewal to strategic resilience, establish a cryptographic center of excellence that will manage policy governance, algorithm choices, lifecycle standards, and also continuous automation. This, of course, supports zero trust approach, speed up adoption of new standards, and keep us aligned with the policies that are set up with your governance committee, I would say. Next slide, please. So basically, with on the toolkit, you will have a CLM maturity level template to establish your governance and also align those policies with best practice. I think that was my last slide, actually. So the toolkit is accessible in the URL, and of course, you will have all the details to get it after the webinar. And
so Zactigo.com/47day toolkit. So
yeah.
that's a good thing to know about. I think, let me real quick do a shameless plug. If this kind of information is useful and interesting to you, I do want to call out the Root Causes podcast, which I create with one of our associates here, Jason Sirocco. We publish new episodes every week. We now have more than 550 episodes in the catalog, all of which are there for you to watch. So please come either see us on YouTube, get us where you watch podcasts, or subscribe. But Root Causes Podcast is a great way to keep up to date on PKI, the industry, public certificates, and all that. And with that, I think we're ready for questions.
Yes, great. And just because that question had come up, we will share both the recording and also the 47-day toolkit that Rida introduced with you afterwards. First question is, are there any changes coming to reduce root and intermediate certificates?
That's an interesting
Yeah.
question. Yes, is the answer. It isn't definitive yet, as in it isn't an official published guideline, but certainly from Google and I believe Mozilla as well, probably Apple. All of the major root programs are really looking at reducing the lifetime of both the roots and the intermediates. Yes, so we'll probably see roots go down to about a 5-year kind of cadence. And intermediates probably on kind of an annual basis and rotating them about every 12 months. Now, all of those things are very likely to happen and probably in the next couple of years. However, what I will say is, in general, they shouldn't be of any concern to anybody because all of the certificates that are provided will be widely trusted. There are techniques to make sure that if we move from one route to another, you can use something called cross-signing to ensure that even, slightly out-of-date platforms still trust those certificates. So your CA will be able to always provide you with a certificate that works and is trusted. It may not be from the same route or the same CA as the last certificate that you had, but it will still certainly work. You should be able to ride those changes out without any problems, and it largely shouldn't matter to most people. But the answer is yes. It's just we don't have a definitive timeline on when those timelines are going to change.
Thanks, Nick. On that date slide we had earlier, do those dates apply for both public and private CAs?
Those are public CA dates. This is very important. The private CA is owned, you're in charge, right? Whoever stands up that CA is the boss of that CA. You can do anything you want. Now, you might want to do some things that are very, 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 very ill-advised, but nobody else really controls it except you. And that includes the maximum term that you're going to put on a cert. So these dates are all coming for public CA and they're set in stone, they're happening. In the world of private certificates, there's much more flexibility.
Okay, great. And then we had a lot of questions that all revolve around costs. Can you talk about costs with the changes in certificate lifespans?
Yeah, this has come up a lot where people say, "Oh, I'm going to pay twice as much for my certificates because I'm getting twice as many certificates." I doubt very sincerely that's going to happen. Every CA is going to create their own pricing and packaging and delivery model. And, I don't know what they're going to do any more than they know what we're going to do. But I don't think it's realistic to think that this is going to turn into an overall increase in the amount of money it requires you to get the same amount of certificate coverage for, let's say, a year. Now, for instance, Sectigo offers subscription, where I subscribe for a year's worth of SSL, and during that time period, I can reissue my certs as often as I want, right? And if you wanted to be on a 6-month cadence or a 3-month cadence or a 1-month cadence today with that, you could. It would be fine. And that won't change in any way once the maximum term goes down, except for the fact that your new certificates will have to be issued and deployed more often. So absolutely there does exist a model in the world of one-off purchase of individual certificates from websites using a credit card. And to the degree that you're doing that, you'll have to see what they charge for the newer, shorter term certs. But for enterprise customers doing volume purchases from us, this isn't going to affect what we charge you. For subscription models, like I talked about before. So I think from a price perspective, a good rule of thumb is to assume that there's not a material change.
Thanks, Tim. Will your network agent support Nginx in addition to IIS and Apache web servers?
Yes, I believe the answer to that is yes, it will soon. It is a roadmap item. I apologize, I don't have an exact date for release to hand. I believe it should be sometime early next year. I think the best thing to do with that one is if you reach out to your account manager, they will be able to get you a more definitive timeline. But I do know it's something that is next on the roadmap for the network agent, yes.
Okay, great. Does Sigtigo offer SMEs or consultancy on how to smoothly transition from manual to automation?
Yes, it's a good question. I think it's another one to reach out to your account manager to. We do obviously have some help with our onboarding team, and we have our great support team who will be able to help. We can offer things like premium support as well, where you can have more available support, perhaps more expanded support. We do also work with third-party professional services organizations and have done for a while, especially when onboarding new customers, and certainly for looking at things like automation. We do have things we can offer to help customers like yourselves to transition from those manual certificates into automation. So yeah, we do absolutely have some options available. I'd encourage you to reach out to your account manager or sales if you don't have an existing account with us, and we'll be able to detail those options and get the information to you about that.
Thanks, Nick. Will automation work with verified mark certificates?
As it stands today, I don't believe it, but really any CA has necessarily much automation with verified mark certificates. There's kind of two reasons for that. Number one is, as Tim just mentioned, they're out of scope really for this. The scope that we're talking about is public TLS server certificates. It's not public SMIME, it's not public code signing, although they do have lifetime reductions. They're nowhere near as aggressive as TLS, and it's not for private CAs. Verified mark, while they are public certificates in a sense, they're also very manual, right? So there's a lot of manual process to verify the information that goes into those things. And so there's no real automation for that yet, but at the same time, there isn't really a requirement for it because they're still available for, I think, at least 1 year periods, if not multiple years as well. So there's no real automation available around the VMC and CMC products today.
Also remember, in general, you'll be using just much fewer of those. So automation has less benefit for you. Go on, Leah.
Is SCM capable of integrating all public CAs?
All? I don't think so, no, because all could encompass, there's a few dozen public CAs, but certainly SCM does have integrations into some other public CAs for issuance, yes. And again, I believe there are 1 or 2 more on the roadmap, which you can get the details of through your account manager. And I'd also say with similar questions like that, especially when it comes to, will X things support X? We do make our roadmaps available. We do discuss that. But the other thing that we do is we can, and we often do, adjust our roadmaps based on customer demand. So we know that there's going to be more and more demand for more integrations. We know there's going to be more and more demand for integrations with our what we call our DNS connector as well. And so more and more people are going to be interested in that, and the feedback we get from our customers helps to drive our roadmap. So if more and more people want integration with a specific CA, or they want support for a specific DNS provider, please talk to us and give us that feedback, and we can use that to adjust our roadmap based on the needs of our customers.
And I'm having one more very similar question, maybe to top it off. Is the Sigtigo DCV connector planned to include more DNS providers?
Yes, absolutely it is. We have a range of those DNS providers today. We do have, again, more on the roadmap, but that's another one where it can be driven very, very much by customer demand. There's a large number of DNS providers out there. We have to build what our customers want. I mean, there may be some small DNS providers in a part of the world where we don't have significant business, but there are also maybe some bigger providers that we need to support. So again, please bring those up with your account manager. We can add those. We may need some assistance to be introduced to the DNS providers in some cases, but we are absolutely good at adding to our DNS connector, roadmap, if you like, based on customer feedback. So bring the names of more that you've got, and we'll get those added to the connector.
Brilliant. We had a lot of questions today. There is a couple that we didn't have time for, and we'll get back to you on those directly. But thank you everyone for your time, and thanks Tim and Nick and Rita. If you've got any more questions, do get in touch with the Sigtigo team. And as promised, we'll follow up with the 47-day toolkit. Keep an eye on your inbox. For now, though, have a good day, and thank you for attending.